guy says to his wife, "Do you love me?" And he says, "With all of my heart, with all of my being, with everything that I am." She said, "I want you to tell the world." And with that, he leans into her ear and says, "I love you." She said, "I wanted you to tell the whole world." He said, "I just did. You are my whole world." May have worked. Hold on. It may have worked. The story almost creates the experience it describes. Okay?
Wow.
And preaching at its best does that. The example this evening in the chapel may not have been the best, but it was an attempt at making the words of the gospel an experience in our lives. Okay? Which I think is at the very heart of all preaching, let alone mission preaching. I always preach from the gospel. That's just my style, I guess. I know Ryan talked earlier, where is he, about preaching from a psalm. Others may use all the readings. I just use the gospel, and I try to crawl into it. What is it saying to me about the presence of God in my life? That's the key. What is it saying to me about the presence of God in my life? Tonight I was trying to say, even when the presence of God is a whisper, it's still broadcast. And when I find myself, if you want, not hearing it very well, when I find myself maybe in trouble, when I find myself discontent, when things are not coming together, it may be that the voice that I'm looking for is still there and I need to lean into it more. So in the very ordinary, every day of my life, the experience of the presence of God speaks to me. That is the one thing I think we have to offer in all of our preaching, is God. I think a lot of preaching is about warmed over Ann Landers. A lot of preaching is about some moral point or other. Preaching is about some point of dogma. Preaching is about almost anything that comes into a person's head. The one thing we have is God. And how is it that in the person that is sitting there listening to us, the experience of God which is already in their lives, and I like Frank's point on that, the experience of God that's already in their life, how do we illuminate it? How do we invite them to see, even in all the stuff they may be struggling with, it is not when the struggle is over that the experience of God reveals itself, it's in the midst of the experience. Joan Chittister put it well, better perhaps than I can put it, and I'm going to read a little piece of what she said. What did I do with my glasses? Oh, here they are. Frank DeCiano thinks they're a little too yellow. I don't care.
It's so citrus.
Seeking God is the universal human question. It is common to all cultures. It's the fundamental human project. It is the common denominator of all human enterprises. It is common to all human beings, necessary to all human endeavors, central to all human effort, and ultimate in all human activity. What is more, it is the only reason that makes any sense whatsoever out of religious life. Religious life is not just another way of life, it is the way of life intentionally organized to pursue the human experience of God. I kind of jokingly said, if this is the last conference I ever come to as a Paulist, and if I left you with nothing else, that's what I would leave you with. Maybe to be too highly personal, that is the fundamental quest of my life, and I'm sure it is yours too. So I just want to highlight it. Nothing else makes sense. That's the fundamental quest. And quite frankly, right now, I'm kind of trying to hear that voice in a way I hadn't heard it before. February next month, I'll be 70 years old.
Wow.
I've been doing missions for a long, long time, and I'm kind of wanting to hear how it is. I've talked to my friend, Father Michael McGarry, a little bit about this. Where is this voice that is buried sometimes, that is in every conversation bringing me to? So it's a central core event, the central core value of my life. That's it. And I want to pass that on, and I want to say that to you. Nothing else makes sense. Didn't St. Paul say everything else is just trash compared to? Okay. Another little quote here by our Holy Father. He's very popular these days. What the heck? The dogmatic and moral teachings of the Church are not all equivalent. The church's pastoral ministry cannot be obsessed with the transmission of a disjointed multitude of doctrines to be imposed. The proclamation of the saving love of God comes before moral and religious imperatives. He puts it another way. Now that's what I think we're all about. And however we want to put that through a prism, your nice phrase, Sebi, before, whatever prism we might want to put it through, which is the Paulist prism, this is at the heart of it. This is the core of it, period. A guy named A.N. Wilson, whom I looked up, he just has a nice quote. He's an English writer and newspaper columnist. He says this: the gospel truth, take it or leave it, the paradox is that growing or shrinking numbers do not tell you everything. The gospel would still be true even if no one believed it. The hopeful thing is that where it is tried, where it is imperfectly and hesitantly followed, it works. The reason I wanted to quote him, apparently he's a rather well-known agnostic and kind of an anti-church guy. It's palatable and remarkable power to transform human life takes us to the position of believing that something very wonderful indeed began with the birth of Christ in the world. So that's just to further reinforce that whole thing. It's about God, and it's about trying to create the experience of God that already exists in people's lives through our preaching. I think maybe one of the best compliments I ever got after a mission, a guy comes up to me and he says, well, maybe I'm not such a heathen after all. Wonderful. That somebody could see in their life the activity of God present, just confirmed and affirmed. What are we all about? That's what we're all about. Not teaching the catechism, not when we preach. That's a whole other thing. You know, the catechism, papal doctrines, letters from bishops, Tommaso said it, you know. But it's all about this whole experience of God, and how does this touch us first, because we know that. Okay. I went through, I am not going to take that much time, but I did want to make a very strong and very personal and very loud testimony. That's it. That's it. That's what makes sense of our lives. Now we have a Paulist spin on that, I know, but that's at the heart of it. I went through and culled all the questions I think you sent, and maybe DeCiano and Spark sent, and wrote them out. There's 33 of them. Is that okay? No, there's not. I'm not going to do that. I am not going to do that. One of the questions is, what is mission preaching all about? For me, it's trying to make everyone that I talk to another Paulist. How can they pick up on that the interest of God doesn't end with the four walls of their church? It seems to me that's we're always dragging that caboose with us, you know, that we don't just tend the flock that's right before us, we always have some concern for the flock that's beyond. And this is just a little aside. Remember when we were in Columbus, and we were already seeing an awful lot of people. I measure it this way. Every Sunday we went through 2.5 gallons of wine at Mass.
Wow.
That's a lot of people. I know you guys see a lot of people. But we wanted to reach out. There were how many thousand students on campus at that? 56,000 or something? Yeah. And we were seeing almost 400 to 4,500 people on Sunday. We had 8 Masses. We decided we needed to find the other, how many did we figure at the time? 12,000 students on campus. There were more Catholics anyway at Ohio State than there were at Notre Dame. And we used to have the president over from time to time, whose name I forget right now, telling him he used to run the biggest Catholic university in the country. But what was his name?
Gordon.
I don't think it was his name.
Gordon. First name was Gordon.
But anyway, Paul undertook getting money from the Knights of Columbus. He wrote articles for the Lantern, which was the newspaper on campus, about trying to lure more students over to the Newman Center. The other people on the staff almost killed us. They said, where are we going to put them? What are we going to do with them? I just highlight that story to say that there's always a piece of what it means to be a Paulist, I think. We're always thinking about the people who aren't there. We're always talking about the people who aren't there. Okay. I think when it comes to Paulist preaching, I don't know if this makes us unique, But I think, first of all, because of even what we're doing here right now, we take it seriously. Preaching is the core of what we do. It's just unimaginable to me when a priest says he doesn't have enough time during the week to write a homily. What the hell are you doing? I want to ask him. You have your 2 cocktails at night? You know? You see a movie or 2? Huh? If you don't have enough time to write a homily, and I'm talking 8 or 10 hours a week, I can proudly say this even tonight, I have never gotten in the pulpit without writing the homily in 43 years, ever. Not for weekdays, but I've never gotten in the pulpit without a written homily. That's how important I think it is. 8 to 10 hours. So I think we take it seriously. I think we try to relate it to everyday human experience. We take time with it. I don't know, what else might we throw out about Paulist preaching? But that's what it's definitely a priority. We take it very seriously. We're known for our preaching, and you have to put a lot of time and effort in. You hear sometimes people say, well, I've been ordained long enough, I can just stand up, you know. No, you can't. I don't care who you are. Walter Burkhardt used to say that he spent 4 hours, this is a great Jesuit preacher, 4 hours for every minute in the pulpit. 4 hours for every minute. I know I'm banging this home, but I want to bang it home because preaching is really, really, really important. What else did I think? Oh, one of the questions was comparing mission preaching from the past and now. It seems to me that our community, and Michael and I talked about this, our community began with a lot of outreach to people who weren't in the church. That's faded. And missions were really, up until maybe Vatican II, pretty much maintenance missions. We went in to kind of shore up the local parish. I even had a long interview with Jim Lloyd, who did missions both in South Africa, when we had a parish there, and here. And they were very thorough. They went from Sunday to Sunday. They knocked at every door in the parish. One of the ways they measured the success of a mission in those days was to how many confessions did they hear? How many people did they reconcile? Every now and then, Tom may want to add to this too, every now and then they would try to add a week that they would tell the pastor they're going to do free for non-Catholics. I think there was only a very small number of people who actually showed up. I think the way we now reach out, if you want, to people who are not Catholic is through what Frank DeCiano does. I don't know if the parish mission is the vehicle to do that. The people who come to parish missions now are usually the most active people in the parish. I think Bruce and I and Frank, we've talked that if you can get 25%, Bruce, of the people who actually come on Sunday.
That's really good.
That's very good. Yeah, 25. So, well, you can figure, usually the smaller the parish, the more people who are going to come. So you have your most active people, if you can turn them on too, be able to give a reason for the hope that lies within them, or as Frank wrote in the name of the bishops in 1993, to develop in all Catholics such an enthusiasm for their faith that in living their faith in Jesus they want to share it with others. That's the pastoral letter. Go and make disciples. The pastoral letter. And so that's what I think, that's what I try to do today anyway with the people who come. We make a big pitch at the end of Mass, you may do too, you know, all the numbers, how many former Catholics there were. I use Alvin's numbers, I don't know if they're still valid, 90 million people in this country who belong to no church, synagogue, or mosque. Anyway, to try to instill in them anyway, through the missions, an enthusiasm for their faith such that they want to share it with others. Try to make them other Protestants. Anything you want to add?
No, that's well put.
Yeah, we try to do that. But very few times do people come who aren't. And it dawned on me, the vehicle now we do use to reach out, our programs in evangelization, stuff that you would have been in Erie today and tomorrow, diocesan-wide, encouraging them to do what we used to do or hope to do on a parish mission, you know, evangelize. Frank dumped a day on me next Saturday out in Queens.
You'll love it.
And he sent me a lot of material. Oh, God, am I going to sound bright? What is the terrain out there? I don't know. I just tell you this much, and Bruce or Frank may want to add. I've been to 400 or 500 parishes. And the Catholic Church in America is wonderful. I preached up in Canada. I'm going back up to Nova Scotia. I've been up to PEI. Church up there is wonderful. Now, we're talking to the better parishes, obviously. Some dump is not going to have. But the Catholic people, they're generous, they're wonderful, they're non-ideological. They want to raise families, they want to experience the sacred, they know there's more to live for than just, the almighty buck. And however you want to put it, there is an enthusiastic core out there.
Yes.
And they're the ones who come to our parish.
Right, yeah.
Right. Yeah, we usually don't get, every now and then, I can tell the story because, a year or so ago, this lady was kind of lingering, and I said, can I help? And it was like right before the mission talk. And she said, I'd like to go to confession. I said, why don't you just come over here? I said, I don't want to start a line. So I said, how long has it been since your last confession? 40 years. Oh, I said, you need a few more minutes than I can give you right now. But that's pretty rare. You don't get that. As a matter of fact, I don't hear confessions unless people ask. You're much more diligent, Bruce. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I hear every mission.
Bruce is incredible. You visit the sick, honest to God. I take a nap. The usual routine on a mission, you may know that. It'd be lovely to have one of your students with us sometime. We preach at all the Sunday masses, and then we preach at twice a day. I do, morning and evening, usually with a morning mass. Yeah. But anyway, the church it's wonderful. It's wonderful. All right. Any crystal ball for the future? I don't know. I think we could use a lot more theater. And I'm thinking of some of the stuff Stephen does at Busted Halo. Where's my buddy Ryan? That street kind of stuff you like? I think that's good. Someone said the great outreach that has taken great fruit at St. Paul's in New York, say to both young adults and gay people, that Gilbert has manufactured. He goes to where they, bars and I don't know, all these different, he meets all these people. He goes out and finds them, like you had that street ministry you were talking about. We got to inflame that stuff. Belle and I are always talking about going to Columbus Circle and maybe setting up a booth, I don't know, ask a priest or something, or, do something. But using more theater, more multimedia, whatever you guys can come up with, I don't know. You have to keep the thing fairly portable. Anything else right off the bat? You do them. Yeah.
In terms of reaching out?
Yeah, well, or how we might, shape parish missions in the future.
Home visitation is still a very good thing.
Okay.
And, especially if you're in an inner city parish. A visit to the sick can also be a form of home visitation, because then you bring in the relatives.
But I'm thinking more how we reshape what we do during that period of time we're in doing a parish mission. That's okay. We can figure it out. But
oftentimes you might even get a TV spot.
Yes, we do. Sometimes smaller places, radio, TV.
Right.
Yeah.
And
with all the electronics though today, I know with what I do, I tell a lot of stories. You could easily illustrate them with slides and stuff like that. I don't have the talent to do it, and it would just take forever to do it.
I'm just curious structurally. I'm thinking of both Paulist Center in Boston and the two parishes I work in. The parishes are now all small communities that form a parish. Do you do anything with koinonia groups? Do you deal with the whole mass, where you break things? I'm wondering if there's something about the smaller units that make up a parish, be a way to energize those groups as well.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
No, that is good. Go ahead.
Yeah, a lot of the parishes I go to, Tom, already have small groups through Disciples of Mission, Renew, koinonia groups like Park Street and so forth. But also I promote small communities through Living the Eucharist, most especially. That's what I'm, Living the Eucharist and Renew, I still am involved with Renew. So I push the small community as a follow-up to the mission.
I'm just wondering, do you ever have Q&A type of things? Is that part of the...
I do after we have, they almost always serve refreshments, so I do that. But sometimes I begin the mission. Did anything from last night? Any thoughts or any questions?
Do people, they engage with
They
that?
do, yeah. I try to talk about the experience. I try to be in dialogue with them. I tell them that all the time. So I'll say, I'll give you some stories about the experience of God. But I said, I want to hear from you. Where does this experience happen for you? One of the stories they like, and this happened in Indiana. After the morning talk, I went down to the parish secretary. I was just kind of, talking to her. And with that, some guy comes in. And now remember, I'm a New Yorker. This is in Indiana. And he comes in, and of course, they all have a dying mother someplace, and that's what he had. And he needed gas money. So I called the secretary over, and I said, let's just throw him out. She said, we don't do that here, Father. That was good. I like that. In other words, if his story is supposed to be ours, if his story is our autobiography, you need to take a little red pen to the narrative you're operating out of, and allow a little bit more of his. So I tell stories about myself and that experience, and that's how it happens, and how does grace dump itself into my life through a secretary, Valparaiso, Indiana, where I was giving a mission. Yeah.
So Tom was saying the homilies go 8 to 14 minutes. When you give a session in the evening, what's the layout of that session?
I usually go for about 70 minutes.
But 70 minutes period, or do you break it up in chunks? Do you have small group discussions
No,
in between?
no.
It just goes.
Exactly. But it's not unlike what we're doing right now. I would have I've actually cut it back a little, but it's still, and they come back the second night. If they didn't, and they come back the third night. And the collections are good. But thank you for asking. Yeah, it's good. But I mean, they could be. It could be more questions and answers. Yeah, by all means. Yeah.
You said talk about God.
Yeah.
I find myself talking about the Spirit.
Okay.
Do you see any difference?
No.
In the way you,
I'm sorry, I just shot off, but I think no.
so they're as far as you're concerned, they're interchangeable.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. In other words, so long as it's on that, for me, I understand preaching as illuminating. The Pope says down here, we have to ask ourselves how we live this out first, okay? And I think that's the Spirit in us, yeah? How do we live out the experience of God? It's the Holy Spirit. Then how do I take that and invite the people who are listening to me, I don't think we bring them God. Frank's great help on that. But we help them to see how God is already there in their lives. And if people can leave church feeling, wow, I'm not going through this life alone, or, in the midst of all of my trials, somebody is still holding my hand, that kind of stuff. Yeah, but I wouldn't say any difference, no. I just used that broader word.
Do you research the parish? Do you find out the demographics? Are they, a lot of suburban parishes are all the same, or how do you deal with that?
Next question.
No, the reason I'm laughing, and that, it was a very, pastors send me all this stuff,
Yes.
and I put it, yes. My preaching in these missions, and I've honed this stuff, is broad enough it'll fit anything the guy wants. So I don't.
Okay. Just curious.
Yeah, no, that's a very good question, and pastors always they always tell me, I say, well, how big's the parish? 37,000 families, one of those. So now I ask them, how many people actually sit in the pew on Sunday morning? So we go from 38,000 to about 800. That's sometimes, and I do it. I say, what kind of parish is it, blue collar, that can help.
It strikes me that some pastors will send you material.
Yes.
But the Census Bureau has some information which is much more objective and probably the pastors even know about.
Yeah. But just to let you know, I don't.
Yeah.
I couldn't, James is better at this than I am. I don't tailor my material that much because it's really broad, If somebody can't understand the Valparaiso story and this woman telling me, so I usually follow it up was, who's asking for gas money from you? How is the Spirit trying to tickle your, what Tom was saying, tickle your soul? Yeah.
Jack, for you,
Chuck.
for James, Frank, Bruce, you mentioned that most of it is maintenance type of folks, the well-involved. How many young adults, college-age students do you see on a mission?
Almost none.
So how do we meet their needs? Because people keep saying to me, you need to bring in missions.
Yeah, Stephen will talk
We'll
about
talk
that.
about that
No,
tomorrow.
but yeah, I don't, it's a good question. every now and then, some younger, first of all, there aren't that many in church to begin with. But every now and then, someone will come and say, I'm home on the weekend, if I wasn't, I'd come. You know, whether they would or not, I don't know. But there's very few young adults.
Yeah, I think it is harder. They're the hardest audience to get. If the parish has a vibrant young adult group already, then a percentage does come. I'll talk about this in mind, but when I give my opening pitch in the preaching for the weekend, and since I use songs and music in my missions, I always make that connection between, again, our faith and everyday life. I affirm that what they're listening to, and this is almost no matter what the homily is, whatever you're listening to in the songs, what you're downloading on your iPods and you're listening on the radio, that's as much a part of your spirituality as a hymn that we're singing, and that God is at work. We're drawn to certain songs. We want to hear them. Why? Because they're articulating something that's going on in our lives. I'm restless, I'm angry, or I'm in love, or I'm feeling vulnerable. That's all these songs are about. And if you're drawn to that, don't think for a moment that's not part of your faith life, and that God cares about what you're feeling and what you're experiencing. Music helps us name that. So that's my little special invitation to the younger people. Again, if they're there in the pews, I will get some. If they're not, again, if their parents drag them along or what. But I'm very emphatic about doing that at every mission I preach.
I think, Jack, like you said about Gil, and I'm sure Steve will probably say more about this, you have to go where they are.
We don't do enough of that.
Yeah.
There's another Paulist, Bob O'Donnell, who goes to all sorts of places where these kids are, and I know he's a good model and a good example.
Yeah.
But, few of us. I guess I'm expecting the people that I preach to do something. I'm hoping that we, 150 or 130 or whatever we are, can't do it. But can I get the people who are on these parish missions to do some of it?
Where I do get, I get some young adults, but where I get more young adults is in the Latino community. Quite a few.
The only thing the whole theology behind it, this is that long quote from Paul, if people don't hear, and if we don't have people to preach, how is anyone going to ever believe? So, I don't know how much we have to articulate the theology of this whole thing, frankly. But I just hope we don't lose this as a charism among us as Paulist. I really do. I really hope we don't lose it. I think it's one of the things that does distinguish us from, the real workhorses of the church. Not that we aren't, but the diocesan clergy, they don't do parish missions by and large. We do. That's one of the things that distinguishes us. And even this parish out in Queens, how many parishes would have a day on evangelization? Dioceses do. But, 1 in 100 maybe. So, these pastors, they feel so overwhelmed already, many of them, that the whole thought of bringing in even another 4 or 5 people, let alone, what we're after. So, it is, Alvin Illick, I think, used to sell it by saying, for every new convert you make, you get $300 a year in the collection. Oh, I'd like to hear a little bit more now.
3,000.
How much?
3,000.
Is it 3,000 now? It's gone up. But, no, it was 3,000.
Think about it this way, you would say, you get one new convert that adds $3,000 to your collection in a year.
Yeah. So what motivates them? We come out of that whole tradition, of Hecker. We really, we do believe that this message that we have is worth our lives, because that's what we've given our lives to. And I think it's well worth it. I think it's a great endeavor. At the very end, I'm not going to have on my tomb, he sold vacuum cleaners. No. Not that selling vacuum cleaners. That's what I want on my tomb. He was a preacher.
Jerry, I'm trying to think of a way to connect your missions with the Paulist Associates.
Oh, yeah, good.
I'm thinking like in New York with beloved Kathleen McGrath and the ladies who used to help you and send out tapes.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if you go into a place, and maybe you did this already, it's a question box, and you might refer parishioners who get, really motivated by what you say or have questions. here's a Paulist associate, or here's a team, if you'd like to converse with them, write with them, you might share about the Paulist charism. I'm just wondering how,
No, that's
if there's some link with the Paulist associates, because you say, when I preach, I want to make Paulist.
Yeah, yeah.
And
The
sometimes-
best I do is I hand out a thing at the end, and it's that thing, we Paulists do this, that, and the other thing, and then it gives the busted halo number
Okay,
and the vocation office.
good.
So that's printed on the back. As an aside, I don't think I've been to a single parish where people don't ask me, do I know Father Dave Dwyer? He's probably our most well-known Paulist right now. He's known really every place. Last Memorial Day, he wanted a phone call from every state in the Union, which he got, and 6 of the 8 Canadian provinces. So he's out there. He's broadcasting. Anyway, I just hope we don't lose it. I think it's really exciting. That's what I want to testify to.
Well, one of the things that I noticed in reading Paul Bobachev's piece on Hecker that came out about his canonization was that it was very clear that Hecker was a missionary. And he went all over the flipping United States. And in those days, that wasn't easy. Preaching. That's what he did. Telling stories and preaching. It seems to me that that model that maybe we had, the older fathers, that we had to prepare 7 mission sermons before we left St. Paul's College. We also had to submit them to John T. McGill.
I understand, too, though, among the students, there is enthusiasm in this generation kind of for missions, which I think is great. You know, we have to keep it up. Even if you don't do it full-time, you know, that model that was floating around for a while with, a Paulist and somebody else going out, that was great. Because it allowed a Paulist maybe to do, 2 or 3 missions a year. It's too bad that model has kind of slipped out, hasn't it? There's nothing as good as doing priest retreats, I'll throw that out. I do those from time to time. Or like Frank, talking a whole diocese, he gets a lot of the big, really big invitations. But if you do a priest retreat, you usually get missions out of it. I stay away from nuns.
Jack, what have you heard as to why more Paulists aren't full-time preachers? Because there are really basically 4 of us who are full-time preachers.
I don't know. Among at least a generation, which may be 2 ahead of these guys, you hear, I don't like living out of a suitcase, I like staying home. I mean, I've heard some of that, say guys who have been ordained maybe 15 years and so on. Would you know? You would have a better idea.
I'd say as the 80s went on, the idea of being an itinerant was less and less attractive.
I mean, you have to be up for it. You know, I am, James is, these guys are. How many beds do we sleep in a year? I mean, the really annoying thing is like getting in the morning, where the hell is the coffee? The guys, I don't drink it. How can you not drink coffee? What's the matter with you? Yeah.
I bring them more packets with.
Yeah, I do too. I asked one guy once, I said, what's the meal plan? He said, meal plan? We don't have one. I can give you a bow and arrow, go and shoot a squirrel. And then other times you get a sweet.
Yeah.
I have something next to a boiler.
One thing, as I really admire what Jack and Jim and Frank, what they all do, but there's different kinds of missionaries. We are all missionaries. And I know I go into mission territory. I don't, go far out of New York City, but I go in mission territory. And I think other Paulists in their parishes very often do too. So I think it's really, different callings for different people, and that's the beauty of it. The beauty of us gathered here is that we follow that calling, and thank God that you have and Jim have and so on, but that we all follow our calling.
When we talked about new shapes, I really should have highlighted that. You cannot believe what Frank Sabate has done. And I want to say with that arts community in New York, you've been working on it 10 years. He's now a player.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, people know him. He's not just on the fringe of this stuff, although some of the stuff is on the fringe. But I mean, he has these shows at the parish. How many did you have last time? 1,000? 1,200?
I didn't want to say that.
No, but it's important. I mean, Frank goes to where these people are. That's another way of doing it, or the street stuff. We have to think of, no, that's really important. They may not know.
No,
How many people-
The one thing I wanted people to know about the ministry is that I do go to where they are, and that it's not, you know, I'm not sitting on my ass and we're having these little cute little art shows, that you're going to people where, and I'll just say this, is majority of people are suspicious of institutional religion. Nearly all the Catholics I've met identify themselves as former Catholics. But when a priest shows up, asks them about their work, takes an interest in it, it really throws a monkey wrench into their plans. It really kind of, suddenly this is, and Gil and I have both heard this at the shows. We can't believe you're doing this. We can't believe you're allowing us, you're taking us seriously. And these are cutting edge people, so, but anyway.
No, it's really important for all of us to hear that. We're there. I mean, I think Hecker would just, you know, he would jump up and down those nights when you have all those people on that gun. You know, connecting with the culture. Every Paulist does not understand either what he does. So, you know, it's not all.
Now that I'm sufficiently embarrassed.
No, you really, that's a great way, I hadn't thought of that, outside the mission box. And also Gil is a missionary.
Absolutely.
Goes all over the city and, you know, talks to all sorts of people. And that's how this place thrives. Sunday night, which was a really bad night in New York, I stopped into the 515 because I know some of these people. It was packed. Quite packed. How many people would that be? 600? I don't know. Packed. And they were almost all young adults. No, I think Stephen.
So I think one of the other big reasons why we don't see more new missionaries is because there is a familiarity with the rigor of priests becoming a pastoral minister in a parish. And you know what you have to do, you know where your money's coming from, you know what your setup is. The other question might be for going into missionaries is A, how do you get started? B, how do you sustain it as an ongoing ministry? What sorts of things do you have to be aware of? You know, some of those practical questions about marketing and promotions and sustenance. I don't think that's, it might be given as a, you know, as a side talk or something in terms of our formation, but it's not what's necessarily concentrated on, because our regularity, if you will, is in parish ministry. That's
That's at the heart, I think. I know James is going to address that.